Brooklyn WAN event. Here with me this morning or today is Mary Tan from the Animal Humane Society, animalhumanesociety.org. Do not forget to smash that donor drive link in Twitch below. All proceeds for this event go to the Animal Humane Society. And I'm going to do a quick introduction here of Mary, and then we're going to get some questions going. And we look forward to taking your questions. Go ahead and type them right in that Twitch channel, and we'll get them right over to Mary. Mary is the Public Relations Manager for the Animal Humane Society, one of the largest private animal shelters in the United States, and the largest in the upper Midwest. Every year, Animal Humane Society provides direct care and services to help more than 100,000 animals in need across Minnesota. While animal adoption is a focus, she also works to establish the Humane Society as a resource in low-cost veterinarian services, training and behavior, in helping making sure that people can keep their pets once they're adopted. She is also the chief storyteller of Whisker Media, a boutique strategic communications agency where she focuses on marketing and public relations for pet-related businesses and animal welfare nonprofits. The mission of her agency is to donate profits back to homeless animal organizations, especially cat rescue groups. Prior to that, Mary was an award-winning reporter and anchor in cities like Atlanta, Minnesota, Las Vegas, and numerous other television markets. She has also reported on major stories for most of the major networks, including Fox News, CNN, CBS News, and NBC News. Being a welfare advocate, Mary believes in adopting special needs animals. She has a 5-year-old kitty named Farley Waldsworth. Is that correct, Mary? Did I say that? Waddlesworth. A former bottle baby kitten who has behavior issues, and a 12-year-old dog named Josie, who has shy and fear issues due to abuse in her past. Welcome, Mary, to the stream. We are grateful to have you.
Oh, well, I'm so excited to be here. This is a lot of fun.
Oh, it's perfect. Do you care if we just dive right into the questions? We're going to talk for about 45 minutes to an hour here.
Let's do it.
Perfect. The pandemic has been a big issue for across the United States for everybody. What challenges has the Animal Humane Society faced since the pandemic?
I would have to say the fact that people are not able to come physically to our shelters for either adoption of an animal or coming for training and behavior classes, we've really had to do a lot of finagling around. And the move to making everything virtual is just a big feat in and of itself. So we have 3 major fundraising events. And one of them is the Walk for Animals, which is coming up in a few weeks. And that is typically an in-person event. And we typically have about 10,000 people come to our shelter. Everybody comes. It's a really fun day. They bring their animals. Those of you from Minnesota probably know all about it. It's actually the largest Walk for Animals in the United States. But we've had to, change to make that virtual. And typically we raise about $1.1 million from our Walk for Animals, but because it's virtual, we're last year we had to change it to a virtual event. We decided COVID hit in March. So in April, we decided that it should be virtual. And we still did really well because we still raised about $800,000.
Wow.
So they're not as, it's different being in person, but people are still really generous. And just like from a media standpoint, a lot of my job is I go out and I bring animals and put them on TV and showcase adoptable animals in our programs at AHS. And it's just been crazy, like with all of the presidential election, the George Floyd situation, the pandemic. The media has really wanted positive news. And so they are constantly calling like, hey, can you do something over Zoom with a puppy or a kitten? And so I find that from that point, we're even busier. And it's been a mad rush. And switching to virtual also has meant to doing it adoptions that way. And we're getting 800 applications for a puppy. In
Wow.
Minnesota, I don't know if a lot of people don't know this, but there's actually a shortage of adoptable dogs in Minnesota because this is a very educated state. And it also has to do with the ordinances, and the requirements regarding spaying and neutering and licensing is very strong compared with other parts of the country. So a lot of people in Minnesota, first of all, they're huge adopters rather than going to breeders, but they also, everybody gets their animals spayed or neutered. So I mean, I like to say when I lived in other parts of the countries, it was, in Texas. I mean, it's common to see a stray animal. If there's a stray dog in Minnesota, it's like 18 people are there to rescue it.
Wow.
Um, and so during this pandemic, we really had a hard time because most of our dogs, especially, come from the South, from southern shelters that have really, really difficult and challenging pet overpopulation programs. So pre-COVID, we would go down once a week and bring up 80 animals. We have like this semi truck, but it's air conditioned and, um, sorry, my cat's
Yeah,
just
no.
getting into trouble. um, Basically, we would have this specially designed truck to transport animals, and we would bring them. So we would go to Houston, we'd go to Oklahoma, we'd go to Mississippi once a week and bring up animals.
So you guys
Um,
partner with the other organizations and kind of, hey, if you're full, we could take, it's that's a fascinating and a very brilliant way for the animals themselves to partner with and say, hey, we could help maybe get some of these animals adopted. We have,
right.
if you're overcrowded, we could, maneuver some things and move animals to try to get them in the right spot, which is fantastic. I did not know that you
And
brought
yeah,
animals from other parts of the nation.
right. It's just fascinating. So animal transport, what's happening in the northern and the northwestern parts of the United States and the Northeast, um, Spain, it's just it might be a cultural thing. It probably has to do with demographics and poverty levels. The more poverty that's in a community, the more likely the animals are not going to be spayed or neutered, and they're just and it has to do with economics. If you can't afford, your basic life needs,
Absolutely.
chances are your animal's not going to get the veterinary
Absolutely.
costs. And spaying and neutering is, it's expensive. And so that's why most of the large animal welfare organizations are switching. I mean, they're really focused on low income spaying and neutering because that's what's going to cure this pet overpopulation issue. So in the upper Midwest, in the Northeast, it is difficult to find animals, and our shelters up here depend on the southern shelters to supply us. I mean, it's fascinating. There'll be like 6 pit bull puppies who will be running around in Houston, are kind of like a dime a dozen. They come up to the northern shelters, and there's 600 people waiting to adopt them. It's just a
Oh, wow.
completely um, different world between different parts of the country.
Wow, that is absolutely fascinating. And so I do know here in Washington State, the just trying to get a my own personal trying to get into the vet is weeks out because of everybody's home with their pets and kind of noticing more and more what's going on. And I was just thinking, I was wondering to get your thoughts of it, how are the animals doing with the pandemic? With more people home, are the pets with their owners more? Are animals benefiting in a strange way? I don't mean to make light of a pandemic, but
Yeah.
in one aspect, are you seeing better quality of care and just with people being with their pets more often, that there's an improvement in it, or has it been different?
Oh my gosh. So I know in the Minnesota area, and we have 2 low-cost veterinary clinics. You can't get an appointment right now for at least 3 months because we're so overloaded. And also with the
Wow.
social distancing, it's like we can't get as many animals in because we have to space people apart farther. So our we can't cram as many vets into one area
Absolutely.
as we used to. So what's happening, and this is very common, and Animal Humane Society actually employs 14 veterinarians, and so I hear these stories all the time. People, like, one lady brought in her cat and was just like, my cat sleeps all the time, and she'd been home, and they gave her, they looked at the animal was in perfect health. That's just what the cat
It
does.
does.
Cats can sleep 22 out of 24 hours a day. Same thing with dogs. And people are just noticing things because they're home all day with their pets.
Absolutely.
And so it's like, no, there's nothing wrong with your animal. It's just you're noticing more about their lifestyle and what they do during the day because you're not home. The other interesting thing is that um, sometimes we adopted out so many pets during this pandemic. Every animal within like 2 days was adopted. And we would get these, we always send them an email asking, checking up on how the animal's doing. And we'll get these things like saying, oh, my dog goes out for 6 hours of walks every day because a different family member goes out and takes them
Absolutely.
out. Well, 6 hours is a lot of time outside for a dog. And I'm sure you guys have seen the memes where there's the exhausted dog and he's like, no, no more walks. But that is so happening. All of that
Really?
stuff, we've seen it from our adopters. They're sending us pictures. They're like, there's three of us in my family. We're all home. We each take the dog out for an hour. um, and so the other thing that we're trying to do now is we're trying to educate people on, um, and when we first adopted them out, at some point this pandemic is going to be over, and you need to prevent separation anxiety,
Yeah.
especially if you adopted the animal as a puppy and all they've ever known is you home, being home. So
Okay.
you need to do some training. They still need some alone time,
Got it.
even if you're home all day with them.
Oh,
And
really?
crate training is great.
Got it.
Yeah, we advise people, to do crate trainings to make the
Really?
transition easier for when you go back to work, if you go back to work at the office.
Wow. That is that is I had no idea. That is wonderful advice and news. What if someone is that's listening that does want to get an animal, what is one thing you wish people knew before they went out and adopted an animal, whether a cat, dog, or whatever? What is something that you wish they knew that you could tell people before doing it instead of learning after the fact?
I would say, don't judge a book by its cover. So don't judge. I, I get so many people that come in and say, "I want a puppy. I want a dog this old, or I want a specific breed." And there are breed traits, but it really depends on your connection with the animal. I see so many people coming in wanting a puppy, and they'll leave with an older dog. Like, for example, if you're a senior and you're getting up there, you have some sort of physical ailment, and maybe you don't move fast, you probably don't want to get a puppy because it's a lot of work. It's a lot of physical work. And so I see a lot of people, they come and they finally get to meet this puppy and they just see this puppy going crazy, and then they finally are like, oh my god, this is too much.
Got it.
And so I would say be really open minded when you look for an animal, because they're all so different. I mean, pit bulls get a very bad reputation, but they're some of the sweetest dogs I've ever met. On the other hand, I've had little chihuahuas and little Maltese bite me and kind of be mean. And so each animal is an individual. Um, and the other thing I really want to point out, and this is for cats and dogs, is a lot of times you'll see animals that are not coming up. You should know that shelters are extremely stressful places. They're
Mhm.
not great places for animals. We try to do our best to make it as comfortable for them. but they're scary places. And the behavior in shelter, excuse me, oh, I have to sneeze. Sorry.
No
Um,
problem.
the behavior in shelter is not representative of the way they might be at home. There are
God.
so many, like my dog Josie would not come out from behind the kennel when I first adopted her. She's shy, fearful,
Hmm.
had some issues and different things. But you know what? When she got home, she blossomed. Once you get, I can guarantee you, especially with cats, if they come across as shy and fearful, if once you just let them around your home and they start to feel comfortable, you're going to see their true personalities come out. Except for maybe puppies and kittens, you may not see their true personality until you actually get them home. So a shy, scared animal in shelter could be the most exuberant thing when you get them home.
Got it. So don't judge that book by that cover. And you said
Mm-hmm.
something very interesting. Uh, and I've always for years thought that there's a connection between some people and the animal itself, a bond, you could say. Do you find that is very true with people that you notice that a dog or a cat meets the right person, the right child or whatever, and it's just instant, boom, there's a connection there, and the dog or the cat kind of chooses the human, and the human kind of chooses the animal at the same time.
That absolutely does happen. We see that all the time. A lot of times it might be like we've had shy and fearful animals not want to come up to anybody and just stay behind, but then they see somebody who they're kind of interested in, and they'll finally come forward.
Got it.
And usually that I want to say, especially in a cat, that's usually a connection.
Got
Um, it absolutely happens. But I've seen it the other way where there's just a shy, scared, fearful animal. It's behind in its cage and it doesn't want to look at anyone. It's not looking at anyone, but you have a human there who's like, there's something special about this animal, and they'll ask to meet it. And they always seem to always work out.
it. Really?
Um, these and it's really really great. But I would say absolutely. Sometimes the animals don't. I would say the shy, fearful animals, they might be too scared to pick somebody, but it's usually the human that instantly feels something special about that animal.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What is your favorite dog or cat breed? Do you have a favorite, or do you like them all?
um, I actually, so I have a cat and a dog, and I love both cats and dogs. But I've always wanted a Sphynx cat. I don't know, it's a
Yeah.
hairless cat.
Yes.
They're so ugly. They're cute. And I don't know if you've ever felt one, but they're so buttery soft.
Oh, really? Are
They're,
they?
oh my God, they're just wonderful to snuggle with. Um, the only thing is that they get cold really fast, so they do need sweaters, especially here. I'm in Minnesota, so like they need to wear
It's so
sweaters. This would
cold.
not be a good temperature. So I've always wanted a Sphynx, but here's the thing. And here's a lot of things about the shelters, especially like up here in Minnesota. You're never going to find like the coveted breeds up here, because if we were to get a Sphynx, I think we got a Sphynx once in 1982. And there were like 45 people waiting to get that Sphynx. But I love Sphynx and rag dolls. And then I love like super Oompa Loompa dogs that are kind of derpy.
Got
Um,
it.
like beagles and basset hounds, like the really dopey dogs. I
Got
have a really big
it.
heart for.
The ones that kind of just flop out in front of the fire and call it good for the afternoon and just kind of lay around
Yes.
and just kind of lazy and just chill out. And
Yep.
it almost sounds like perfect for someone that's gaming. Some dog that could just kind of sit at their
Yes.
feet and just kind of hang out, and not in between games you could reach down and kind of scratch their head and give them a pat and maybe a biscuit or
Yes.
something, and all of that. Perfect for gaming. And cats, except for climbing on keyboards and getting in front of monitors and everything else that kitty cats tend to do while people are playing.
Yeah. So I have this special thing called a desktopper, so that my cat is attracted to that instead of um instead of like, on my keyboard. They love keyboards, and it's warm. It's so nice and warm.
Exactly.
And that's why they love it. And so, but you know what? That makes like life better with pets anyways.
Absolutely. Well, folks, we are talking with Mary Tan from the Animal Humane Society, animalhumanesociety.org. How can people get involved, Mary? Is the best thing to go
Oh,
to your website, or what's the best way for folks to get involved if they wanted to?
yeah, the best way is to go to our website, animalhumanesociety.org. There's ways you can volunteer. There's ways you can donate. And volunteering isn't just volunteering at our shelters, where you'd the way it works at the Humane Society is our volunteers are really like the customer service people. So our adoption staff are really doing all the paperwork, and then our volunteers help people actually pick out a pet.
Oh,
So
wow.
we have almost 2,000 volunteers, but what we really need right now are fosters. And no matter where you are in the country, there is such a need for foster volunteers, because the more fosters we have, the more animals we can save. Fosters are going to be anywhere from a pregnant dog and pregnant cat, and you help see it through pregnancy. It's actually, you don't actually have to do much because the mama does everything. um but once they have the kittens and puppies, then you have them all
Yeah.
over, running around, and puppies, let me just warn you, are really messy.
Gosh.
And you're constantly have to,
Yeah.
bathe them because they're always getting in things. The other thing that's in high demand are older big dogs that have medical issues, the really big dogs that maybe have a broken leg,
Oh, wow.
that sort of thing. And the way it works with most fostering is there's no cost to you. All their medical expenses, all their food, their veterinary expenses are taken care of. They just need that animal to recover in a home environment. So all you have to do is provide the TLC and the petting of this animal. And
Wow.
it's a great way. Let me tell you, fostering is a great way to determine if you really want a pet, or if your kids are, if going to be responsible enough to get a pet.
Yeah.
You can test it out, and then you just get to you start getting so much experience with different animals the more you foster. And I'll tell you, you can do we have people at the Humane Society who don't have any pets of their own. They solely foster, and they consider that having a pet is just having a different foster animal. But every animal welfare organization and rescue across the United States is always searching for fosters.
Got it.
Um, so if you can help. And then the other thing I just wanted to mention is animal transport. So AHS is really big. So we have the transport vans, but a lot of the little rescues also do transport, and they will transport one or two animals at a time. And so what they need are volunteer drivers. So what you would do is maybe, I've seen a beagle that went from Rochester, Minnesota to Los Angeles, and it had 45 rides along the way. You just, meet another driver. You may drive an hour, then you meet another driver, then the dog gets transferred until it gets to Los Angeles. And there's a wonderful site called dubert.com where you can sign up to do, if there's a transport needed in your home area and you're willing to drive, an hour or so, to get that animal, to help get the animal on its way. That's a wonderful thing as well.
Wow, I had no idea. So fostering, driving, and there's no cost. If you do decide to foster, there's no cost other than just
Mhm.
taking care of, making sure the food and water's down and petting and all of that.
Right.
I did not know that that was a bigger, and that's a great point for people that want to try out
Hmm.
and see if a dog would work in their house, or if they like that. And it sounds like it could be a short term or potentially turn into, I'm sure you've had situations where someone is fostered and then all of a sudden they say, I want to adopt this animal
Hmm.
and keep it for now that it's recovered, or whatever, and moving on. Wow, that
Right.
in the you throw on the any type of media nowadays, it's kind of dark and a little bit, maybe a little bit depressing with all the major
Hmm.
stories of the suffering that's going on out in the world. It sounds like on the opposite side there is always a shed of light of people really taking care of their animals, really taking care of their communities, helping one another. And sometimes a pet can help humans,
Hmm.
help humans as well keep calm or to get through situations that they have going on in their own lives. And pets can benefit a family. So
Hmm.
it's just wonderful to hear some kind of some success and positivity instead of it's so easy. I'm sure you could talk for ad nauseum on the flip
Yes.
side when it comes to animals as well. But I like the fact
Hmm.
that it's a lot of positivity and a lot about
Right.
helping animals, helping people instead of the other way. Can you give us a one of your favorite all-time adoption stories that you could think
Yeah.
of, or one or two that you really were just remarkable in your eyes?
Yeah, my favorite is this she was a golden retriever lab mix and her name was Missy. And she was found in a ditch in northern Minnesota. She'd been hit by a car and her owners just decided to leave her for dead. And a very small rescue group in northern Minnesota picked her up, and she had incredible orthopedic issues. Two broken legs,
Oh,
femurs were shattered. She was in really horrible shape. Well, after we took her down to the Minneapolis St. Paul area where we are, and we ended up fixing her up back. Uh, I think it took 6 months.
wow.
It took. She was in foster. She had her surgeries, and then she went to foster to live with a foster family for 4 months. Um, and the foster family happened to be the woman taking care of Missy actually was some sort of an assistant at a senior home just down the street from the shelter called Tradition Senior Housing, and they wanted to get a very low key like pet to therapy pet that would
Yeah.
live at the senior home. Well, it ended up being Missy. Missy was perfect.
Oh, wow.
And she's now lived there for 3 years. And it's a 3-floor facility with an elevator, and she spends time on each floor every day, and she waits by the elevator until somebody goes up because she wants to go to the second floor, and then she knows, and then she'll wait by the elevator until somebody can press the button because she wants to go to the third floor.
Good.
And it's the most wonderful story. She's a situation where the Humane Society probably spent, oh God, $8,000 to $10,000 to fix her up.
Wow.
And so that's a perfect example. In most shelters, so it works both ways. So the puppies come in and they need, very little. They just need to get snipped and then they're on their way. So, their cost of care isn't nearly as much. But then you have dogs like Missy, who we spent thousands of dollars on. And we also knew that she needed to go to a special home because, she has some lifelong
Yeah.
debilitating features with her legs. So she can't do a lot of, physical exertion and that sort of thing. So going into a senior home was perfect.
Perfect.
And so she's just doing well, and she's been there 3 years now. And then they also adopted a cat from us, a senior cat. And apparently, though, they have some issues with the residents, like shutting their door so that the animal stays with them the whole time.
Oh, got it. So they're not sharing properly instead of just letting the cat or Missy and the cat kind of do what they want to do or go visit who they want to visit during the day.
Right, right. And then this is another thing. One of the residents died, and Missy got really depressed
Oh,
because she
really?
didn't. They can feel. They just know, like, something's up. She's fine now, but after this. this senior had passed away. She was so sad. And, they really do bond with you, even if
Absolutely.
you're in a senior setting.
Absolutely. What's the best part of what you do?
You know what? The best part, I got into it because I want to help animals, but I really realized that the work that I'm doing cannot be done without people. You know how you always hear about, like, oh, I'm an animal person, I don't want to deal with people. But in animal welfare, you cannot save animals without people. And so it's super fun being around like-minded people who, I mean, when you work at the Humane Society, your conversations, so I've been at the Humane Society for 3 years, but prior to that, I never really, you don't necessarily talk about your pets to your coworkers, but at AHS, it's the conversation is always about animals. And it might be about, their bodily functions, like
Hmm.
they couldn't go number two today.
Exactly. Exactly.
And these will be like, standard staff meetings or whatever. And so it's working at an animal shelter is a little bit bizarre, but it's really fun too.
Got it. That is absolutely fantastic. Um, Let me see here. Let's see, Ian. Do we have any questions in the chat?
Yeah, so we have one from Kate Briggs. She's wondering if you could repeat the link that you had mentioned earlier for your organization.
Oh, yes, it's animalhumanesociety.org. That's for my organization. And then I think I also mentioned, if you're interested in animal transport,
Yeah.
this is a national website called Doobert, DOOBERT.com. And they also, Doobert is not only transport, but it's foster too. So the whole goal of it, it's like, they call it like a match. It's like a match.com and an uber.com
Got it.
Okay.
for
And can
animals.
they use the animalhumanesociety.org to apply for being a foster, or is there a link specific to that?
To apply to be a foster, I believe there's an application on I think it's under the volunteer tab, and you can look under there and you fill out an application to be a foster volunteer. So our shelter volunteers, uh, are still not all of our volunteers are back in the shelters yet. It's slowly reopening, but the foster volunteer needs are really active, and we're in need of those actually right now. And if you volunteer for HS, it's wonderful because we are open 7 days a week, and like we have vets 7 days a week. So if you have an issue, because a lot of times you might be taking a sick animal, they'll teach you how to give the animal medicine and that sort of thing. But if you have any questions, you can call us. Um, Everything is provided. So if you're fostering a cat, the cat litter, the toys, bedding, the kennel, same thing with the dogs. All of it is, and that's actually, I should mention this. So AHS is supported by Purina. So we get $1 million worth of animal supplies and food from Purina. So that's why we're able to really support our fosters really well, because we get
Wow.
truckloads of Purina dog food and cat litter every week. And so that's what we give to our fosters, and that's what we feed our animals as well.
Got it. So would you think fostering would be for someone that does maybe work from home and then does gaming on the weekends? Would fostering be
Yes.
depending on the situation? Because I take it most dogs and fosters are just going to kind of, if they're not feeling very well or have issues, they might sleep a lot or just kind of relax and not be, not have to go for
Yeah.
walks 10,000 times a day, or, be that, those high energy situations. So that might be a nice pairing for anybody that's
Absolutely.
looking at potentially adopting or having the space or fostering or just thinking about it to maybe help out an animal, help out yourself.
Mm-hmm.
and brighten up your place or your family's place or your friend's place or anything along those lines.
Yeah, I mean, and all there's education given. The other high need is neonatal kittens. So animal shelters are our number when we get neonatal kittens in, we want to get them into foster within like an hour because kittens can't regulate their body temperature and they can't. I mean, they really can't do anything. And so they have to be monitored immediately, especially we get a lot of neonatal orphans and they need to be bottle fed and they're fed every 2 hours. And so for that, we need somebody who's home all the time. And That's another huge need. But that's a lot more labor intensive because they're just like a baby. You have to feed them every 2 hours with a bottle, then you have to burp them, and then you have to potty them.
Absolutely.
But they're so cute and they're really, really fun. So bottle baby fosters and then big dog fosters. And here's the thing about the big dog ones. A lot of times, they're suffering from some medical condition that just needs to clear up. And so a lot of times all you have to do is give them medicine. And some of these animals are, they might be a little sick, so they're not going to fight you like a normal dog would or whatever. And especially a dog with a broken leg. I mean, your main thing is they're not going to be moving around a lot. Your main thing would just, be carrying them outside to go to the bathroom or something like that. So it's fostering for gamers is perfect, especially if you don't want the long-term commitment.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of our fosters will be like, well, I can foster this month, but I'm going on vacation this month. And then that's the other thing. If you go on vacation, usually another foster will step in and take care of your animal while you're gone.
Oh, wow. Again, so it's almost like the gaming community in people rallying around each other to make sure that
Mm-hmm.
things go smoothly, and sharing of resources and getting along and playing along. And, that is just it's funny how
Yeah.
there's some similarities in both worlds, very different worlds, but then you come together and you could see some similarities in how things are done and how people working together can solve issues and make the
Right.
world a little bit better place for any animal or any again. And if you're helping an animal, you're helping yourself and helping others, around making your world a little bit better. And that you can't go
Yeah.
wrong when it comes to any of that. What is there? Say someone did want to adopt. What is that
Mm-hmm.
adoption process like?
So, at my shelter, we're a very large shelter, and we believe in not putting barriers to adoption. So, there's some organizations that want to do a home visit. They're going to ask you a lot of questions about your lifestyle, your home, whether or not you have a fenced yard. But we have found through research that just because you don't have a fenced yard does not mean you're going to be a bad dog owner. Like I don't have a fence for Josie, my dog. I take her out on a leash and just bring her out. And so our adoption process is really first come first serve. Um, the animal welfare industry, like most industries, is very political, and there's different thoughts of doing things. There are some rescues and shelters that are very strict as to where their animals go to. And then there's some like ours, which is like, we're going to ask you some basic questions. We are going to ask you some, you know, um, you know, during the adoption process, we'll say, this animal is a responsibility. Are you going to have the appropriate support to do it? But it's just basically filling out an application, and then you can take the animal right away. But it kind of doesn't make sense to put a lot of barriers up, especially in the United States. There's a pet overpopulation issue.
Oh, there is.
I mean, there still is. There's still about 730,000 animals that are euthanized in the
Wow.
United States for space. So, Animal Humane Society has not euthanized for space since like the early 90s.
Wow.
Um, and our save rate is about 94%, our placement rate. Uh,
Wow.
and it's really interesting because you know you hear the terminology no kill. Well, here's the thing about that is that no kill specifies that you have a save rate of at least 90%. And so Animal Humane Society we could call ourselves a no kill shelter. However, our CEO has strong beliefs that no kill is really kind of a marketing term. It really brings in money from donors and different things like that. And so, we choose not to use that terminology. And here's the other thing you have to take into consideration. Are you going to keep an animal alive solely for being alive if it's in pain or it doesn't have a good quality of life, or is it a danger to the community? There are just some animals that should not be placed in homes, and it is up to the organization to be responsible and determine if that animal, can live successfully in a home. Because, you with dog bites and different things like that, it's at AHS we really think it's our responsibility to make sure every animal is vetted before it's sent into a home. And there are organizations that are keeping animals, that have dangerous bite histories. And, that it's not that that's wrong. It's just the different schools of thought.
Exactly.
It's kind of like the Democrats and the Republicans.
I was just going to say, is a lot of different ways to make it happen. A lot of viewpoints, political, personal
Mm-hmm.
as well. One question I do have, and I read this, and I don't know if it's true, but I read many places that they said a Great Dane is a good apartment dog. Is that true? That I could get
What?
a Great Dane. I guess Great Danes just kind of flop around. They don't do much. So they are a good apartment dog. And I was going to check to see if there's any validity to that. Because to me it sounded
Absolutely.
like nonsense. But I don't know enough about any of this.
So a Great Dane needs the ability to move about and stretch. I mean,
Okay.
uh, it's true. Great Danes are very docile dogs. Actually, the bigger dog, the more docile it is. Now, is it possible to raise a Great Dane in a studio apartment in New York City? Of course, it's been done. But is that the healthiest for the
Got it.
animal? Probably not.
Got it.
Um, an animal needs a big animal needs room to roam around, whether it's just, I mean, even if it's just walking around.
Got it.
um, I do think that like people should consider their living situation
Absolutely.
does matter, especially determining the size of the animal, and not even the size of the animal. It's really more based on the energy of the animal. But
Absolutely.
there are date grains, like a puppy Great Dane is gonna need to move around. It's
Got
gonna
it.
need, to get out. And if an animal can't get out its energy, that's when they do naughty things. That's when they destroy your house and your furniture.
Got it.
So it's really a key of making sure they're enriched.
Got
If you have a Great Dane living in a little apartment, if they're getting out and going to the park and,
it. Got it.
you're giving them dog toys all the time, that actually would work.
Got it. So it's just a lot of dependent on the situation and the animal itself and everything like that. You have must have ran into like sitting there and some 6'4" biker looking guy comes into the shelter and ends up picking a little puffball little dog, and you're just going, it's amazing that the animals can soften the biggest bear and bring out kind of the best of individuals at times, men, women, all sizes, all rate, the whole smorgasbord that is the United States. But I'm always shocked by the big burly biker
Hmm.
type person that comes in, and all of a sudden underneath their coat they got a little 5 pound little dog that has stolen their heart. That always puts a smile on, always gives me a chuckle and puts a smile on my face to see The
That happens all the time, actually. I mean, there's a lot of stereotyping people and animals. So I have two great stories. So um, it's amazing because African Americans are typically um, stereotyped with pit bulls. Well, I can tell you that when I see African Americans in our shelter, they gravitate towards the little dogs. It
Really?
you can't judge people by its cover. And then I'll see, you know, I've seen like a wealthier white family from one of our more affluent neighborhoods. They come in and adopt a pit bull puppy. So there's no, you know, there's no rhyme or reason. It's really about that personal connection with the animal. I actually have a really interesting client through my business named Sterling Trap King Davis. You guys should look him up. He's a former rapper with Tech Nine. And I'm not into rap, so I don't know that much about Tech Nine, but I bet some of the youngins out there know. He is now the only African American cat rescuer in the country, and he does cat wrapping. And he goes out and he does this process called TNR, trap, neuter, return. It's the only humane way to control cat overpopulation. So the U.S. has a big feral cat population. These are cats that live in the community. They're owned by no one, especially down south in Atlanta where he lives. So he goes out and he traps cats, and he raps while he's trapping cats, and it's really funny. He was featured on the Today Show and the Washington Post and all these places.
That's awesome.
But he's like that burly, you know, black guy, tattooed, and he just loves kittens and cats, and he's cuddling them all the time. And then when you talk to him, you're like, oh my God, you look nothing like your image, you know. And his whole mission is to reach out to the African American community, and especially out to young African American men and boys, that you don't lose cool points for compassion. Absolutely. And that cats are cool, you know, because, you know, and that's another thing when it comes to cats. I just want to point out there, because I am a cat person, that cats are really discriminated in the United States. They are not on the same level as dogs. Um, Cats tend to be pets of the poor. There tend to be more of them, and it's simply because cats can live outside much easier than dogs can. And so, the pet product market is really geared towards dogs. 90% of pet products are in the dog sphere, while only 10% are in the cat sphere.
Wow.
It's changing. It's vastly changing. Cats are becoming the cool thing. The internet has really changed, you know, with all the cat videos, and then there's the cat video festivals and different things. So dogs have dog parks, but cats have the internet. And so cats, thanks to millennials too, has really cats are getting there, but there still isn't the research done on cats in terms of veterinary care. And only 40% of cats actually go to the vet, compared to like 70 or 80% of the dogs. And the more, the wealthier you are, the more dogs you have. The poorer you are, the more cats you have.
Gotcha. I had no idea that was statistically kind of what you guys see out in the data across the nation.
Mm-hmm.
That is absolutely fascinating. Well, Mary, we're coming up on roughly an hour. Again, we're talking with Mary Tan from the Animal Humane Society, animalhumanesociety.org. Ian, any other questions in the chat?
Yeah, I've actually got two quick ones that I definitely wanted to have answered. So the first one is, do you know the history of an animal?
That's a really great question. If it's an animal, typically, if it's an animal that's owner surrendered, like here in the United States, we will know a little bit more information. Typically, when an animal's surrendered, we only do it by appointment, so that we can sit down with the owner and find out the animal's background. Why are you surrendering it to us? And then also, you know, our other mission is to try to keep people with their pets. So we may offer, like, have you thought of this? We can help you with resources so that maybe you can keep this pet rather than surrendering to us. But if all else fails, we take the animal. They have a sheet that they fill out and tell us where they got the animal, how old they think the animal is, and then we ask them for the veterinary records if they took the animal to the vet. The animals we get from transport that are coming from down south, the shelters down there provide us with whatever information they get from, I would say a lot of the animals that we're taking in from the southern shelters are stray animals. So we know very little. So when an animal comes to AHS with no background, they have to go through a behavior test where they are graded on like A through F. So, for example, um, there's a test like if we'll use a fake hand. If it's an animal we don't know, we'll put a treat on it and we'll watch how they accept that treat from that fake hand. Or we'll put a bowl of food in front of them. And if we take it away, are they reactive? Do they growl and fight us? Or are they okay with it? So they have to pass 5 tests before they can move on and actually be adopted by us. And so this testing is the way we can sort of try to figure out what their behavior would be at home, but there's nothing foolproof. And I would say the majority of animals that we adopt out, probably 90%, we don't know the background, but we can do, we take precautions by doing the behavioral testing. Um, a great way to adopt, if you want to know more of an animal's background, is to adopt through a rescue group that's living, if it's a adoptable animal that's living in a foster home, because then the foster can give you a lot of information about what this animal is like at home. So there's different ways to adopt, and I would say, it's faster to get an animal through a shelter. You can usually adopt it the same day, but if you really want to know the background and really want to be more secure about what the animal is like, I would adopt through a foster to adopt situation, which would be an animal rescue.
Perfect. That's amazing. And then the other question was, it's kind of a possible two-part. It says, do you work only with cats and dogs? If not, what other types of animals are in your shelter?
Oh my goodness. No, we work. I'm terrible for not mentioning our critters. The critters really get the shaft in just about any animal welfare organization. The rabbits, the hamsters, the guinea pigs, the ferrets, the birds. We take all of these animals. The only thing we don't take are pigs and horses and different things, but a lot of other rescues, like the Dubuque Humane Society in Iowa. Like if we have pigs, we'll reach out to Dubuque and say, hey, can you take our pig? We also work with, there's a few bird rescues, and then all our wildlife. So we take all animals, but we work with different nonprofits. Like somebody brought us a squirrel the other day, and so we brought him to the wildlife rescue where this squirrel will be nursed back to health. We will take everything, but we will usually farm out these animals. We also do humane investigations for the whole state, so that includes horses as well. But we don't take the horses ourselves. Once we hear about abused horses or horses needing homes, we'll bring those horses to local horse rescues who will take them from us. But we financially may support them in taking care of these animals.
Wow. That is absolutely fantastic. The work you do is incredible for animals and human beings, and it must be just a at times challenging, but at the same time a very rewarding to see smiles on the animals and on the people's faces when you get a good match and get, it's a nice problem to have when you adopt, you can't keep animals in the shelter, that they're going out for adoption or other places instead of being euthanized. And that's just absolutely wonderful. This, your nonprofit is absolutely incredible, and I love the idea of breaking down the silos and working together across other nonprofits and finding ways to make situations work, and being creative and being open to saying, "Hey, we got this animal. Can you guys help us?" And having people that are willing to help and drive and volunteer. Please go to the website, folks. Please donate your time and energy if you have it. Consider fostering. And Mary, we just are grateful that you're here, grateful for what you do, and thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to come and speak with us for an hour or so about this important work. We really appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. This is a lot of fun. I could talk about this for hours.
I bet.
And also I want to remind you, like, animal welfare organizations need volunteers, and if any of you are going to retire soon, consider volunteering at your local shelter, or at your local rescue, because really animal rescues, while they're for animals, it's really about the people. I mean, it's like-minded people helping animals.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. This has been a pleasure. I wish you the great rest.
Get an update